Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kevin, and we are inside China business. Evergrande is one of China's largest property developers, and they're now basically bankrupt. They're insolvent, and the company is being liquidated. That's commonly known. There's news all over the world about this bankruptcy. What we learned a few weeks ago is that major Wall Street hedge funds were buying Evergrande bonds. They expected the China government to step in, liquidate the company, and pay back the bondholders of Evergrande. Their strategy was this. In the event of a company going bankrupt, the common stock investors get completely wiped out, usually. But the lenders, that is the banks and the bondholders who loaned the company money, the assets of the company are going to be sold off, and then those loans and bonds are paid back. And they knew from their experience in Western countries, the United States and Europe, that governments usually will step in and bail out key bondholders and banks. These hedge funds were hoping that as an investor in these bonds, they could make a lot of money when the China government did that. This strategy, this investment, this trade put on by the Wall Street hedge funds had no chance of working. You could take everybody in China who thought that might work and put them in that Burger King over there. And if you thought this would result in a big profitable payday, it means that you don't know anybody here. So it's important to understand, first of all, that the property market crash here in China and the bankruptcy of many of these developers and banks that did the building and loaned money for the building. These are not problems. These are solutions to problems in the eyes of the China government. I came here in 2012, so this is my 13th year, I guess, here in China. And even when I first arrived here, the property speculation was crazy. And it was getting worse and worse and worse. I was living in Shanghai then, and the apartment rent I was paying, I was renting a nice apartment, but if you do the math, you realize that the landlord would not live long enough to collect all the rents he would need to buy the apartment. It was many, many millions of RMB, and he was charging me like 5,000 or 6,000 RMB a month. That was how far out of whack the sale values were compared to the rental values of the properties. In 2015 and 2016 in Shanghai, I actually knew couples who were getting divorced so they could buy more real estate. There was a wrinkle in the Shanghai law that said that if a couple divorced, that the spouse, usually the wife, would have the right to buy an apartment to live in. And so it was a way around them getting around the property speculation rules. The real estate speculation was completely crazy. It was insane and out of hand. It was like nothing the world had ever seen, probably. And China has three very major problems, challenges, all of which were made worse by all this rampant property speculation. First is that they need to move almost 300 million more people from the countryside to urban areas in the next about 20 years. Okay? And if speculators are in the market driving up the prices of apartments everywhere they're built, it makes that much more expensive. These, after all, are subsistence farmers and small shop owners. They cannot afford super high prices for apartments. So the property speculation problem was really hurting that movement to urbanize much of the rest of the country. The second problem, which everybody also kind of knows about, is the low birth rate problem. And if you ask young people here why they're not settling down and having families, the number one answer is that housing prices are too expensive. And the property speculation was literally killing the next generation of Chinese who would maybe never be born because it's so difficult to buy a house. I do understand there's other global trends here involved, and there's a sex disparity between men and women, etc. But when you ask young people why aren't they getting married and settling down, having a family, they say that's the number one reason. How expensive it is to buy a home. And then to have a second child, you need to go from 2 bedrooms to 3. Property speculation is destroying that impulse to start families. In fact, in Shanghai, property speculation was breaking up healthy families, healthy marriages. They were getting divorced so they could buy more. And the third major challenge is that China simply must move away from real estate development as a key driver of GDP. It is sucking up more and more productive capital that should instead be going to new companies and new industries. And it became obvious to everybody living here that this could not go on for much longer. There isn't enough money on earth to keep these prices going up at double-digit rates in all the cities across China. Something had to be done to stop the rate of growth and to drive prices back down. In 2017, Xi Jinping gave a speech in which he said, "Housing is for living in, not for speculation." Xi Jinping is a president of China, so when you see him speaking, you can assume he's saying something important. He also doesn't do public speaking or public speeches very frequently anyway. When he speaks, he is not merely giving his opinion. He is declaring emphatically the policy of the China government, which is that the property market of China is now closed to speculators. Every single person in China who bought speculative real estate, investment real estate, since he gave that speech has lost money. Every single real estate company who has loaned money for investment real estate since Xi Jinping gave that speech has lost money. The China government has also made it clear, then and since, that they're not going to bail out anybody. They're not going to bail out private investors. They're not going to bail out banks. They're not going to bail out the property developers. They are deliberately allowing thousands of Chinese individuals and institutions lose money. But the idea these hedge funds had in New York is you're going to buy the bonds and the China government's going to step in and help you make $1 billion. That's what you thought was going to happen here. This is one of the reasons why people hate Wall Street. Because we need affordable housing in America. You could have taken these billions of dollars and built affordable apartments for people living in California or Florida or anywhere, instead of coming to China and speculating on residential development bonds for a company going bankrupt, hoping that the China government was going to bail you out and make $1 billion easy money. You could have used the money for something else. You wouldn't have made a killing, but you would have made a difference. So I'll share some of the details from this article. It's in Fortune, and it's written by Wall Street people for Wall Street people. So it's a little bit difficult to follow. Plus, they get some of the key parts wrong, namely that these hedge fund investors were disappointed at the China government intervention. There was no intervention. That's what they were complaining about. That's why they lost money. They expected the China government to come in and liquidate the company and distribute the proceeds to all their investors, including them. The China government did not do that. There was no intervention. So when you read that part of the article, I've got big issues with it. So when you see the term killer trade, that means it's giant possible returns with very little risk. That's a killer trade. And distressed debt means the debt of a company that is insolvent, that can't pay its bills. And the idea here is that if you buy some of that debt, when the company gets broken up, you can make a lot of money when the true value of those bonds hit market realities of the underlying assets. In the point of view of the China government, the bankruptcy of Evergrande is a good thing. They don't want to stop it. As the company is liquidated, all those apartments will be taken over by the banks that lent the money. The China government owns those banks. So they'll be getting millions of apartments, many of which are finished, most of them nearly so, for free, to be disposed of any way they wish. And when that happens, a lot of the problems I referenced earlier just go away. A lot of the people in the rural countrysides can move to new apartments, and they won't really cost anything. Hopefully, many of the apartments will go to younger families just starting out who can affordably begin and raise a family. And it will release a lot of productive capital into the economy, which can be used for other purposes. I will share the article now and include the links in the comments and description below. There is some other information here that's interesting about the back and forth between the negotiators in Hong Kong and in China that I thought was interesting too, and you can read that at your leisure. Thanks for watching. Be good.